Not at all a coincidence that on the day In the Heights is released in theaters last week, Netflix casually jumps all over that hype by releasing its first teaser trailer for its new musical Tick Tick Boom. Now, for those of you who just said TikTok what, maybe don't stop this video just yet. Hello everyone, I'm Marc Daniel Patrick. Thank you so much for checking out the channel. Let's get right to some comment reactions from last week's video, which was a video on the new musical from Andrew Lloyd Webber, Cinderella. If you haven't seen that video, I'll throw that one up top. Please go check that one out as well. Our first comment comes to us from Joe, who says, "My friend and I have very different opinions on Andrew Lloyd Webber's statement. I thought it was great that he was standing to get theaters reopened again, while my friend thinks he's being really obnoxious to think he's above the government and what they're enforcing. What do you guys think?" Well, thank you, Joe, for the comment. So anyone who's not familiar, Andrew Lloyd Webber, he made a statement to a local paper in the UK saying that whether COVID restrictions are lifted or not, he's going to open his musical anyway. So anyone who's in theater has a bit of a flair for the dramatic, and I would say Webber's not an exception to that at all. He's being very dramatic when he says that. Obviously, if COVID restrictions are still in place in London, or if it's unsafe to fully open, they're not going to do it, understandably. But I think this just came out of frustration for him that he's, everyone has just been in lockdown for so long, and, his opening of the musical has been pushed back so many times. I'm sure he had a much broader explanation of how he thinks this should go in the interview, but that's just the headline that the newspaper decided to run with, obviously. I think it's just a headline grabber and a way to grab attention because everyone's anxious to get back to this normalcy, right? So, but thank you, Joe, so much for the comment. Our next comment comes to us from Movie Melody, who says, at Marc Daniel Patrick. At Mac. You got to be from Boston, right? At Marc Daniel Patrick. Now I can't do it. Can you talk about Gerard Butler? Can you talk about why Gerard Butler gets criticized as a bad singer and Ramin Karimloo gets praised as a good singer, even though they are both not classically trained singers? Interesting. Okay, I'm sure. Look, I'll give it a short version here. There's an entire video I can make on just this topic alone. The short form would be, I think Ramin, yes, while he's not a classically trained singer, no training really at all and no background at all, he has spent so much time in the theater that he's been able to garner these techniques and been able to build up a repertoire and able to build his vocal cords into something that's very professional sounding. So that's number one, where Gerard has spent most of the time either in theater or in film and hasn't really had that vocal training. Ramin is going to wake up every day being, a Broadway star or a West End star or anywhere, wherever he's performing around the world. He's going to wake up every day and get into some vocal exercises right away. And that's how he's going to start and build his muscle and be able to sound as close to a professional trained singer as he can. So I'd say that's a big discrepancy right there between the two. While neither of them started as professionally trained, you could definitely work your way towards it. And I would say Ramin has spent a hell of a lot more time working towards that than Gerard has. Having said all that, I think what you're really getting at here is, why does Gerard Butler take so much heat for his casting in the film version of The Phantom of the Opera? And I think this needs to be a full video in the near future. In fact, I will add that to the list. We're going to make a video on this coming up to discuss certain people who are not traditional singers cast in singing roles in movie musicals. And it's a big debate that goes back and forth. So many people have different opinions on whether it should be singing first or acting first, or whether they should try to hit both at the same time. So I will get into that in a future video, but thank you so much for that comment. All right, as typical for our Thursday video releases, let's take a look at some theater stories that are grabbing headlines this past week. From Jeff Daniels announcing he will return to his role as Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird, Lily Allen is set to make her West End debut in the dramatic thriller 222, and Tina Fey's brand new musical show Girls 5 Eva has already been picked up for a second season. But let's talk about 2021 for a second, because it's suddenly become the year of the movie musical. The pandemic of the last 18 months has closed theaters all over the world and brought production companies to a complete standstill. But the light at the end of our pandemic tunnel seems to be filled with dancing Puerto Ricans, a grown man in an arm cast going back to high school, jazzy-style knife fights, and... Wait, Spider-Man can sing? Not at all a coincidence that on the day In the Heights is released in theaters last week, Netflix casually jumps all over that hype by releasing its first teaser trailer for its new musical Tick Tick Boom. Now, for those of you who just said TikTok what, maybe don't stop this video just yet, because that's our main story for today. I wanted to take a look at what this musical is about, who's in it, and who's responsible for bringing it to the big screen. So let's start with our first point. Tick, Tick, Boom is the brainchild of someone who's a god amongst men of any musical theater student in the 1990s, Jonathan Larson, the award-winning composer who's also responsible for a little-known musical titled Rent. Now, the story is largely autobiographical in that it follows a character named John, a young songwriter struggling to make a name for himself in the theater world, all while dealing with the anxiety of an upcoming show he's mounting, his impending dreaded 30th birthday, and the all-too-familiar fear that a career in the arts is filled with nothing but rejection and Mr. Noodle. Now, the stage musical was originally just a three-hander, as John's girlfriend and his friend would play various different parts within the show. Encore's 2014 production actually featured Lin Manuel Miranda, Karen Olivo, and Leslie Odom Jr. as their star-studded cast. But when it comes to film, yeah, all that needs to change. Which brings us to who we can expect to see on screen. And in the title role, although it's been announced for over a year now, still has me kind of somewhat shocked. How he can go from playing one of the co-creators of Facebook to swinging on a web as Peter Parker in Spider-Man, an Oscar nomination in Martin Scorsese's religious epic Silence, to now playing the lead role in a movie musical. And I'll admit, even from just a 90-second teaser trailer, Andrew Garfield looks like more than the right choice for this project. Joining him on screen are the likes of Vanessa Hudgens, Alexandra Shipp, Judith Light, and of course there's a cameo in there somewhere for Joel Grey. But the most surprising report has to be that Bradley Whitford is set to play Stephen Sondheim in the film, who's not a character in the original stage version. Of course, Jonathan Larson grew up being such a fangirl of Sondheim in his entire career, so really I'm interested to see how they're going to weave this one in, but it's not that much of a stretch. And finally, that brings us to the genius minds behind this film. And if I gave you 3 guesses as to who's making their film directorial debut with this project, you wouldn't have to look any further than Piraguas and a first-year makeup student just practicing some facial hair. Look, great movie. It was in a fantastic movie. That's just bad. Point being, of course, it's Lin Manuel Miranda who's behind bringing this story to the big screen, and I can't love him enough for it. I mean, Rent is a show you cannot overlook. It will go down as one of the greatest musicals ever written. But after Jonathan's tragic death in '96, just days before Rent was supposed to open on Broadway, it would take a true musical theater nerd to dust off another one of this great composer's work and share it with the world. And that's exactly what Lin is doing for us here. And with the help of one of the greatest filmmakers of all time in Ron Howard, and a production company that seemingly prints the world's currency these days in Netflix, I simply cannot wait for the Garfield, Miranda, Howard, Netflix version of Bohemia in Tick, Tick, Boom. That's our video for tonight. Don't forget to leave me a comment and hit that subscribe button. And until next time, I'm Marc Daniel Patrick, and thanks so much for watching.